Let me give you a very brief about sonnet and a comparison of sonnet with something we have in Kurdish language like ghazal. Actually, ghazal is not a very exact equivalent for sonnet. We can say shewa ghazal, something like ghazal. But from the view of content, actually what we have in Kurdish or Persian or even Arabic ghazal is the same in English language, which is actually talking about love and talking about beloved. But what I am going to talk about today is some features and characteristics of Shakespeare's sonnet. Since you are not students of literature department, no need to talk about the details, but I just try to make some important points about his sonnets clear. First of all, Shakespeare's sonnet are on the basis of two themes, two very important themes. The first theme is love, and especially true love, in Shakespeare's opinion. And the second theme is time. But what is the relation between time and love in Shakespeare's sonnet? I want to talk about this link between love and time, and I try to give you some examples from the Kurdish version and the English version. You know that Shakespeare is famous for his dramas, but at the same time his sonnets are very well known. And I talked with the head of your department, dear Mamosta, that actually in the world, for me, there are three important poets. In the Western culture, we have Shakespeare. In the Eastern, we have Hafiz Shirazi and Nali. These three important poets in the world focus on love, true love, and time as well. Shakespeare thinks that what deserves in life is love. Humankind can be called humankind because he or she can love. So what makes people or humankinds distinguished from other things in the world or other animals in the world is love. But at the same time, he believes that love is so strange because we experience it in our short life. So, in his sonnets, he tries to tell us that how we can make an eternal love, a love forever. Is it possible to have an eternal love? So, when I actually was reading his sonnets for many, many years, and then I could translate only 40 sonnets of Shakespeare, and then I printed my translation in this book, Silsilah Ghazal Ashqanakani Shakespeare. Actually, I got some important points about this definition of Shakespeare for human being. Human being is somebody who can love, who can make a love relationship. But at the same time, he thinks that love is temporary. Love is something that can be happened in a very of time of human's life. But his main question is that it's okay, we can make it eternal, we can make it something for forever. But how? This is my question. How we can make love eternal? Actually, in some of his sonnets, he thinks that love is an humane experience. We are human and we can experience love in our life. And it is the nature of human life that one day everybody should die. Everybody should die. But death of human does not mean that it can be the reason for death of love. We as human die one day, but love can be eternal. Again, the question is here, how? How is it possible to make a true love and an eternal love? Shakespeare thinks that the root of beauty in the world and in the life is love. And love can be eternal when we have true love. When we love somebody, not because we need him or her, but because we love him or her. So, I think the root of the base of beauty of sonnets of Shakespeare is that love is the basis of life. Love can be eternal. Let me give you a very simple example of his poems. For example, one of his very famous sonnet is sonnet number 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. No need to read all the poem in English, but let me give you the version of Kurdish. Just a very small point. Here Shakespeare says, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? But in my translation, I have changed summer into spring because of, the speciality of our nature in Kurdistan. If I compare somebody that I love to a summer's day, it is very, tragic in Erbil, especially in Hawler, because summer is too hot. So I have changed it into spring. آیا دەکرێتەوە بشوبهێنم بە ڕۆژێکی بەهاری تۆ کە جوانتر و ناسکتر و سازگارتری لەو ڕۆژە هێندەی پێناچێ باە تونند و تیژەکان شکۆفە پشکوتەکانی مانگی گوڵان دەشەمزێنن ماوەی بەهار فرە کورتە و زوو دێت و تیژ تێدەپەڕێ کاتی وایە چاوی ئاسمان زۆر گەشت دەدرەوشێتەوە و زۆربەی جاریش ڕەنگ و ڕوخساری زێڕینی ڕەش و تاریک دادەگەڕێ ئەوەی جوانە هەندێ جاران لە جوانی کورتی دەهێنێ جەیان لەبەر هەڵکەوت و ڕێکەوتی جیهان یان گۆڕان و لە ڕێگا لادانی سروشت بەڵام بەهارستانی هەرمانی ئەتۆ هەرگیز ناژاکێ و سیس نابێ. You see? This is a step toward eternality. ئەو جوانیەی کە تۆ بوویەتە خاوەنی قەت نامرێ و لە کیس ناچێ مەرگیش لەوەی تۆ بکەویتە ژێر نسەی باڵەکانی شانازی ناکات و شایی بەخۆ نایەت چونکی تۆ لە دێڕە هەرمانەکانی هۆنراوەی مندا دەبیتە پاژێک لە زەمان. Again, time. پاژێک لە زەمان کەرتێک لە کات کەواتە تا ئەو چرکە ساتەی مرۆ هەناسە دەدا و تا ئەو کاتەی چاو دەبینێ و تا ئەو دەمەی ئەم هۆنراوەیەم زیندووە ئەم شعرانەم ژیان بە تۆ دەبەخشن و لە سۆنگەیان هەتا بوونی تۆ دەستەبەر بوو. So in this sonnet we see Shakespeare, or the speaking voice of the poem, loves somebody. This is the first thing. Second, Shakespeare says there is a big enemy of love, and this big enemy is time, because time is against the humankind and at the same time love. But Shakespeare, let's put it in this way, uses a technique for making his love eternal, and it is the technique of writing about love, writing about somebody whom he loves. So the beloved, or as he says Dildar, or in Arabic literature ma'shuq, can be eternal when she or he is placed in the frame of poetry, is put in the skeleton of language, literature. This is the main point that I have focused in my introduction to Shakespeare's sonnet, that time cannot kill love when love is written in the form of literature, in the form of poetry. And actually, now we are talking about Shakespeare and Shakespeare's love. Why? Because we have his poems. We can read his poems. This point can be helpful even for us in our Kurdish culture and literature. Why we know Habiba in poetry of Nali? We don't know Habiba personally. Even we have not seen a portrait of Nali and even Habiba. But why we know Nali, why we love Nali, and why we love Habiba? Because Habiba exists in the poems of Nali. So this is very important, and actually Shakespeare here, defend his love and his beloved against the will of nature. Because nature, like for example in the form of death, likes to put an end to our love, to our body, to our life. But when we put our love in the world of literature and letter and writing and in general art, time cannot kill us, cannot kill our will, our love. This is important, especially for you guys as students of English language, because you need to write. You need to express yourself in the form of writing. What you have in your mind, what you have in your heart can be expressed, can be written. And through writing, you can make what you love eternal. The same thing that Shakespeare did, and Nali did, Hafiz did, and even now many writers and poets do. Let me give you another sonnet of Shakespeare and talk about it so shortly. For example, in sonnet number 19, again, this is a fighting between Shakespeare and time, because Shakespeare considers time as his big enemy, devouring time, Blunt thou the lion's pose, and make the earth devour her own sweet brood. Pluck the keen teeth from the fierce tiger's jaws, and burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Make glad and sorry seasons as thou fillest, and do whatever thou willst, swift-footed time, to the wide world and all her fading sweets, but I forbid thee one most heinous crime. Now, look at the Kurdish version. أي زمان كهمو شتك هالدلوشي. Killer time. پنجەی شێر ئاسات کول بکەو ڕێگا بدە با زەوی ڕۆڵەی شیرینی خۆی هەڵوشێ دانی تیژت لە کەڵپەی بەبری دڕندە هەڵبکەنە و قەقنەسی تەمەن درێژت لە خوێنیدا بسووتێنە و هەروە کە تیژ تێدەپەڕی وەرزەکان گا سەرخۆش و گا خەمبار بکە ئەی زەمانی تیژ تێپەڕی ڕەوت خێرا لەگەڵ ئەم جیهانە پان و بەربڵاوە و هەرچی خۆشی خەمۆک و ڕەنگ هەڵبزرکاوێتی چی دەکەی بیکە بەڵام ڕێگات لێ دەگرم و ناهێڵم تۆ دزێوترین و چەپەڵترین جینایەتی ڕۆژگار ئەنجام بدەی ئاخ ئەی زەمان. You see ئاخ ئەی زەمان, which means a very, tough fighting. Yeah. ئاخ ئەی زەمان بە نەشتەری کات ژمێرت نێوچاوانی جوانی یارم هەڵمەکۆڵە و بە قەڵەمی کەوناراییت چ هێڵی پێدامەهێنە لێگەڕێ با دڵداری من لەسەر ڕێگات پێشێل نەبێ و هەڵ نەوەرێ و دەست لێ نەدراو بۆ ئەبەد بمێنێتەوە تاوەکو نمونەی جوانی بکەوێتە بەردەست و دیدەی ئەوانەی لە مەودا دێنە دنیاوە دەبا پیسترین پیلانی خۆ بجێڕی ئەی زەمانی پیری بەدفەڕ سەرباری خراپەکاریت یاری من لە شعری مندا هەتا جوان و جهێڵ ژیانی خۆ دەخاتە گەڕ. So you see, here again Shakespeare talks about his love and the danger of his love, or the danger in front of his love, and the way that he can solve this big problem in his life. That one day everybody should die, one of them his beloved. But if he writes about his love in the form of poetry, time cannot kill her or him. Actually, another point that I think is worth of mentioning is about the kind of love that Shakespeare portrays in his sonnets. It is, in my opinion, a very humane love. It is not a metaphysical love. It is not a love in the heaven, but a love on the land, on the earth. This is, I think, a very big difference between, for example, a poet like Hafiz and Shakespeare. Because sometimes, even a difference between Nali and Shakespeare. For example, let me give you an example of Nali's poem. تو كحوري ولا نيو جنتي ديدم تدكي لم دلي برشررو سيني سوزانم دا. You see, here Nali says, you are Hori. But you know that in our religious texts, Hori exists in the paradise, not on the earth. But Shakespeare's experience of portraying love and beloved is not metaphysical. It is not in the paradise. It is on the earth. It is touchable. You can experience love when you are live, when you are living. I think this big difference actually pushes Shakespeare to talk about how he can make his love eternal. Because in Shakespeare's opinion, love can be experienced or can be happened just during the period of your life, not after death. So, for making this short and temporary and worldly love, you need to write about your love, and then you can make it eternal. Okay, let me give you the last example and give you a very short conclusion of my seminar and finish my speech. A very beautiful sonnet is, in my opinion, of course, is in my choice, sonnet number 104. To me, fair friend, you never can be old. For as you were when first your eye I eyed, such seems your beauty still. 3 winters cold have from the forests shook 3 summers pride. Again, no need to read all the text, but let me give you the Kurdish version. غزلی ژمارە 104 بۆ منەی هەواڵی ئازیز تۆ هەرگیز بۆت نییە پیربی چۆن جوانی تۆ لە چاوما هەر وەک ئەو یەکەم جارەیە کە چاوم بە چاوت کەوت لە ڕەوتی تێپەربوونی وەرزی ساڵاندا 3 زستانی ساردم بینی کە ڕۆشنایی 3 هاوینیان لە درەختانی دارستان سڕیەوە و 3 بەهاریان کردە پاییزی زەرد و زار بۆنوبەرامەی 3 خاکەلێوەی دڵکەش لە 3 پوشپەڕی گەرمدا سوتاو بوو بە خۆڵەمێش بەڵام تۆ لەو یەکەم جارەوەی تورت و تازە بینیمی هێشتاش هەروە سەوز و سەرزیندە و ڕووگەشی داخەکەم بەو حاڵەشەوە جوانی وەکو میلی سەعات بەسەر ژمارەکاندا هێواش و بەکاوە خۆ دەڕوات بەڵام چ هەست بە ترپەی هەنگاوی ناکەی کەواتە ڕەنگ و ڕواڵەتی جوانی تۆ کە من پێم وایە هێشتا کەش نەجوڵاوە دەبزوێت و ئەوە چاوی منەکەوا بە هەڵە چوو لە ترسی ئەو ڕۆژەی جوانی هاواڵم کۆتایی بێت لەگەڵ تۆمە ئەی زەمانی هێشتا نەزاو بەر لەوەی تۆ لە دایکبی هاوینی جوانی مردبوو. So again, the same theme, the same fight, the same problem, and the same resolution. Beloved is beautiful, the love is the true love, but we experience love as humankind. Humankind should die at the end, and we may forget the love unless we put it in the frame of poetry and literature. So beauty can be reserved, can be eternal, only if we save it. And how we can save it? We can save it just through poetry, literature, and art. So guys, I don't want to make more other points, but as a very short conclusion, I just want to say that you are students of language. Maybe some of you are interested in literature. You will be teachers of future of Kurdistan. And actually, what I want to say is that literature, art, culture can be very important for our society, for our way of thinking, and even for our fate. Now we are in the English department. Why we study English language? Because it is a global language. Because the culture of English now is the dominant culture in the world. Because now exchanging between, cultures in the world, between politicians in the world, is through English. We can do not exactly the same thing for Kurdish language, but at least we can save Kurdish language through writing. We can save our, love for humankind around us, for our love for Kurdish culture, Kurdish history, for our country, for our region through writing. This is why I think modern society is the society in which we have writers, we have poets, we have artists. And I think this is a very good criteria for estimating, developed countries or developing countries or non-developed countries. I think we have great examples and samples in our culture to work on, like Shakespeare. It's true that I have translated Shakespeare from English into Kurdish, but what I have, my main message is that we can be proud of our poets like Nali, Mahwi, Haji Qadri Koi, Wafai, like Shakespeare. But unfortunately, we have not worked on them. You see, we have not translated Nali's poetry into English to introduce him and his world to the world. Believe me, I don't exaggerate, but believe me, some of Nali's poetry, Mahwi's poetry, have nothing less than Shakespeare's poetry. When Nali says, for example, هرچند روتم به خدا مائل روتم به برگی علت کهتی و میلی هتاوا. Even if you cannot understand it, you see a very beautiful music in this poetry. And there is, a very deep world of meaning in the poems like this. So at the end, I am here not just to clear some of sonnets of Shakespeare, but to motivate you that you are the culture builders of Kurdistan, not in the far future, in a very near future. And I am optimistic about you and about my country, but there is only one condition. Just you need to work hard. Okay, again, I am so proud to be here. I thank the head of your department. I thank Mamostani Baris. I thank all of you, and especially Ms. Bekhal, who made this link for me and the department. And again, thank you for having me and for listening to me. Thank you. If there is any question, any